Hello, welcome to episode 3 of the Shanty Knits podcast. I am Chantal, your host. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back and spending some time with me. If you are a new viewer and you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button and come and join me in future episodes. I would love to chat with you in the comments and see what you're up to and see what you're knitting. I can be found on Instagram as Shanty_D. And on Ravelry as Shanty Knits. So feel free to chat with me on either of those platforms, and I'll be happy to chat with you back. And or if you just want to leave a comment down below, I try to answer all comments, so definitely love to chat with you there as well. Today I will be talking about 2 finished objects I have, which are both test knits. Both have a March 30th release date, so you should be able to see those on Ravelry for sale in early April time frame. And then I also have 2 test knits that I have as works in progress, so I'll be talking about those. At the end of the episode, I'll be going a little bit into why this podcast is a little bit late. I did get a little sick, but we're not going to talk about the C word. It wasn't a C word. This is a C word free podcast, so at the end I'll get into a little bit of life stuff, what's been happening while I've been on the mend, and 2 acquisitions that I have. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to stick around, but I'll keep just the knitting up front for those of you that are just interested in the knitting, and the life stuff at the end, as well as my cup of the day and what I'm drinking. So, I think that's all for introductions. Hopefully I nailed that one. That took me about 2 tries, so hopefully I got it right this time. We're hoping. But this is the Dyomyre, and this one is March 30th due date for me, so it should be on the Ravelry pages early April. This is a colorwork pattern, not all over colorwork, obviously. It's knit as a crop top sweater, but just like most things that I do, I made it into a cardigan. The orange is a non-superwash merino that I hand dyed myself, and then this beautiful variegated colorway is Hue Loco. Her fingering base in the 80/20 superwash merino nylon, and I believe the colorway is called Wizard. So if you're interested in that, I think she still does have that on her website, and if not, I'm pretty sure it's one of her throwback colors that she does occasionally, so you should be able to find it. But this is my body is going to look a little bit different than some of the other project pages that you might see, just because I did the inverse of the colorwork pattern. So I made the lights the dark and the darks the light. And this is why mine looks a little bit different than maybe what Audrey will show on her Instagram or anything like that. But the pattern is really easy if you want to invert it like I did to do a different type of colorwork pattern. And I think that's it for the modifications that I did on that part. I did that because, as you can see, this collar I wanted fairly large, so I didn't want a huge chunk of color here and then a huge chunk of color here. I wanted the button collar band to stand out on its own, because I do really like how these colors kind of come together, and especially with the orange, how I think they offset each other really well. So I didn't want that to be too much of a color block, but after doing it, I think it might have been fine just the way that it was, but you never really know until you actually see it on a large scale. And maybe next time if I knit it, I would do the large color block here and then the large color block on the button band, just to have something different. If I were to knit it again, I would do a few short rows in the back, just because I didn't like, not that I didn't like it, I think it could have been lower in the back as opposed to how it sits now. But if were to do it again, I would definitely add those short rows into, additional short rows, because she has short rows worked into the pattern, but I would do additional short rows into the actual body of the sweater. I did Hue Loco, so I didn't get those large pooling effects on here, but for the most part, the yarn was pretty even. And the sleeve has, I did 3/4 sleeves, but in the pattern there is full directions for full length sleeve. So I did 2 repeats where I think on the full length sleeve you do 4 or 5, but she gives you really good instructions on where you should be stopping that pattern, how to measure the pattern if you're close to the end of the sleeve so that you have enough ribbing in the pattern, or if you don't want ribbing at the end, how to modify that as well. So definitely very well written instructions. This was the first real colorwork pattern that I had done in I think about 6 months to maybe a year. I can't really remember when the last time I did like a real colorwork pattern. I believe it was the Aparafina. It's also by Audrey, but that's just the yoke colorwork, and I think that was about 6 months ago, and that was probably the last time I did like a real colorwork pattern on a garment. Like a hat is a hat, but on a garment it's kind of different because you have to work in those different things and really make sure that it's going to work and sit nice on your body, whereas a hat, you can kind of finagle it, kind of stretch it to make it fit over your head, whereas the body, it's got different curves and stuff, so you got to work with that. I will add in some project photos because I already took my project photos, but I'll add some project photos of the garment so that you can see it close up and the colorway and how I paired it with an outfit. Photos, but I'll add some project photos of the garment so that you can see it close up and the colorway and how I paired it with an outfit, and probably how I'll be wearing it, not that same dress, but how I'll be wearing it for most of the spring time. But I do really like this color and how they go together. It is an awesome, I think the colors came out awesome. For the collar button band, what I did was short rows throughout the button band, and then I also did additional short rows in the collar part of the section. So that's where you get this deep kind of V for the extra short rows that I did right here compared to just the button band portion right here. But I think that's all that I wanted to say about that. Oh, for this cardigan, I use 235 grams of the main color, the orange, and then 75 grams of the contrast color, including this button band. So it wasn't a large sweater garment project that required a lot of yarn. I did the size 5, which I think has a 45-inch bust, 42 or 45-inch bust, but it didn't really take that much yarn at all. So, and it was relatively quick, so it was definitely a nice knit. That's something to keep you occupied. You get some popcorn knitting up here, but the color work, if you can kind of see, is fairly simple repeat on the body part of it. The sleeve you have to pay a little bit more attention to, but the body part is a fairly easy repeat of the color work. When I do my color work and most of like lace knitting and stuff, I'll use, if it's not like a huge block of different, more intensive pattern, I'll do like every 2 or 3 pattern repeats, I'll put a marker, as opposed to every pattern repeat, I'll put a marker. Just so I know if I make a mistake, especially for a test knit, the mistake happened in this section and I need to go back and fix it, whether it be a drop stitch or just knitting 2 stitches together accidentally. And I would recommend that because in the whip that I'll show you later, because of the black yarn, those markers and the pattern repeats have saved me from missing a drop stitch drastically. Like, several times I've missed a drop stitch, and I knew that it was in that pattern repeat, and I found it as soon as I went back, as opposed to going a couple and like getting to the end and realizing that something's not working out right and having to go all the way back to figure that out. So I'm definitely a fan of stitch markers. If you're not, that's your bag, but I'm a fan. It definitely saves a headache in the long run. I will leave that like that for you guys to admire. And hopefully I stuck in those project photos for you guys so you can see up close the sleeve pattern, the back of it, and how it drapes actually on a real life body. Not to say that she's not good showing the aspects of it, but hopefully I add those in there so you can see. The second finished object I don't actually have with me. It's blocking, and I'll add some pictures of the blocking, of it blocking here. Here. I really liked this pattern, and I know in my last podcast I was talking about giving it away, but I am no longer giving it away because I really like how it came out. It's an asymmetrical shawl, and I'm not one of those people, because I use the brooches and whatnot, but I'm not one of those people who have like a really hard time putting on an asymmetrical shawl. Like, once you get a brooch and you stick the brooch where you want it to be, it's going to stay where it lays. So I am a fan of asymmetrical as well as triangular shawls. I will wear a circular shawl, but I'm not a fan of knitting a circular shawl. Just the amount of stitches at the end it can be overwhelming for me. Like, if I spend 15-20 minutes on a row, like, I'm bored with it after that row. I'm like, yeah, this is taking forever, and I just want to be done with it. So, not a huge fan of knitting some circular shawls, but I would definitely wear them if I happen to knit them and finish them. So that one, asymmetrical, it has garter eyelet sections, feather and fan lace sections, interspersed with garter mohair sections. So it's a really good beginner shawl if you're looking for an easier shawl, or your first multi-skein shawl, or anything like that. It has both charted and written instructions, but in the written instructions you have stitch counts at the end of each row. So it's really easy to keep track of what you're doing and where you should be and how many stitches you should have on your needles. So if this is something that may interest you, where you have a break at the beginning where you're just doing simple eyelet rows and then you get into a more intensive lace pattern, this lace pattern has stitch counts at the end of every single row, so you can keep track of what you're doing. For the lace pattern, however, you can't really use markers because it kind of shifts, the pattern repeat kind of shifts in the stitch count. So it's not one that you can really use markers on, but you do have those stitch counts at the end of each of the rows to make sure that you're where you're supposed to be. It has I-cord borders on each, as well as semi-I-cord bind-off. And the pattern, on mine, I did a traditional I-cord bind-off at the end. And I also modified it at the end because I wanted to use up most, if not all, of my fingering weight yarn. So what I did was alternate at the end both the pink and the blue fingering weight yarn to maximize just how much yarn I could fit into the project. I ended up using all of the blue yarn, and then I don't have the little ball with me, but I have maybe 2 sleeves of stitch holder worth of yarn left in the pink yarn. So I definitely reached my goal in using up all that yarn. I think I only have about 15 grams of the mohair left. I don't know what I'd use it for in the future because it is my only ball of mohair. So if something happens to come along, or if you have a small mohair type project that only takes a couple grams, drop it below in the comments. I would love to check it out just so I can use up that last bit of mohair, because it is a stunning, stunning blue color. The colorway is called Sapphire. All of those yarns are by Hue Loco. So the pink, let me make sure I have it right. The pink is called Flawless. The blue is called Bath Bomb. And then the mohair is a 70-30 kid mohair silk base, and that is called Sapphire. So all of those Hue Locos. The Flawless, probably not available on her website because that was a club colorway or yarn of the month. I don't remember which one, but those are usually exclusive to the club, so you can't really get those again as a repeat. But I know if Bath Bomb's not available, that's a regular colorway, and sometimes she does throwbacks on hers, so she'll be bringing those back. If you follow her on Instagram, she usually puts a little blurb on there saying that she's bringing back some retired colorways. So if you're a fan of that one, just keep an eye out on her Instagram, and hopefully she brings that one back. I think that's all that I wanted to say about those two finished objects. Once I get my project page up with the actual project photos of the Wisp shawl, I'll definitely probably put something on my Instagram as well as mention it in the upcoming podcast, whichever one, and then put a link down in the description. If you are interested in any of my projects, when they do come out, I usually do go back into my old episodes. I only have 2, but I try to go back and put the actual links of the projects into the episode. So if they're not there now, if you check back and I don't mention it in a future episode, if you check back later and you're just interested in the project, I will update the link in that. So if somebody's watching this like next year, the link is there that they can click on and see the project, as opposed to having to go to Ravelry, search me, find it, and do all that jazz. But those are my only 2 finished objects. My whips, I have 2. They're 2 test knits, so they're not, again, not available, but one is this. Make sure I don't drop my stitches. So this one is a bottom up, all over colorwork pattern. I am making it a cardigan, so drop some stitches. I have a steek, 7-stitch steek panel, and in the pattern it has one more stitch. It has a split hem in the back. So the pattern is written for lace weight yarn held together, but she also gives you the meterage for if you just want to use 2 contrasting fingering weight yarns. But because it's a lace weight held together, it is supposed to be doing this marled effect. But if you're using fingering weight yarn, you just have to alternate the skeins. At first, that's what I was doing, was just alternating the skeins, clipping the ends, weaving them in. I got tired of that, so I just joined it in the round and added a steek pattern. I think you can see that. But added a steek pattern. Since it's a split hem and you're going to finish it in an I-cord bind off anyway, I'm just going to steek that, and then the I-cord will kind of encase those steek stitches. But that's the only kind of part of the pattern that I didn't really... It was becoming tedious as I was knitting it, so I just thought there has to be an easier way to do this. But if you're holding 2 lace weight yarns together, that's not... You're holding one of one color and one of the other, so you'll get that marled effect without having to cut a yarn, go back, and re-pick it up. Or I guess I could have... No. But I am using Knit Picks Korma, which is that wonderful variegated like color block yarn. I didn't write the colorway. I want to say it's like mermaid. I want to say it's mermaid. I was debating between mermaid and another colorway that's also similar to this, but I think this one is mermaid, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll link it down below to the actual colorway. I didn't write it down, of course. Yeah, I didn't write down the colorway name. But this is the Korma that I'm using, and then also Knit Picks palette in just the black. And I love the way that they are knitting up together. I think it gives it an air of interest, the way that those colors kind of blend. Gives it kind of a wintry feel, but I like it. It's going to look 10 times better once it's blocked, because some of it is not puckering a little bit, but you can tell like the stitches aren't laying exactly flat, but once it's blocked and laid out, it'll definitely look a whole lot better. Show you my floats. So those are my floats. I'm definitely getting better at my tensioning and an all over garment for color work, so it's coming out really well. It's definitely a fast knit. It is I want to say it's like 35 or 36 row repeat, but it's one of those ones where you're just like, you get to the end and then you just do another part of the repeat and it just comes together, and it keeps me interested because of those color shifts. I just love the way that it goes from one to the other and how it's just working up. It is really an exciting knit. This one, April 20th, April 21st, somewhere around there. I know it's April 20 something that this one is that our due date is, so probably the end of April is when it should be released. It's a bottom up. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's bottom up. So once I get to the sleeve section, she has steeks written into the pattern. So you're going to steek the sleeves as well as the neckband, just so that you can continue knitting in the round. And then she gives video tutorials as well as written instructions on how to do those steeks. So if you're new to steeking or you want to try something, this probably would be a good first project for steeking, because she does have those video tutorials in the pattern. I don't think they're available on her YouTube page. Like, you have to buy the pattern, and it's a link in the pattern that you click on and the video pops up for the tutorial. But I'm doing a cardigan version, so I'll also be steeking the front of that. Once you're done with the garment, for the back part and at the hem, you do an I-cord finishing. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to look. If I have enough of the Korma, I think that's what I'll do the I-cord in, just to give it that extra touch of color, especially when the color changes and everything around. So it'll give it another layer of interest. I'm probably going to do the pattern as written other than the cardigan version in the front, but I like how it's coming out. I would definitely, if your pattern allows, I would definitely use Korma in colorwork patterns. It just gives it that extra layer of interest other than the colorwork. The color changing just makes you keep going. I am about 2 to 3, I think 2 inches from the sleeve steek, so it's coming along really nicely, and I should be able to make that April due date no problem, unless I get stuck on Sleeve Island, but I don't really see that being an issue. Sleeve Island has never really been too bad an issue for me, especially if the yarn is as interesting as this one is. I do want to mention that the sleeve is knit plain in stockinette, and it's knit in your main color, so the black is what my sleeves will be knit in, and then it'll have that marled effect on the cuff as well. So, I don't know. I'm debating on whether I just want to do stripes or marled, but I'll see once I get there, because today I want stripes, tomorrow I want marled just to give it some symmetry, but we'll see once I start knitting the sleeves what I actually do with it. I think that's everything for that one. I don't know if I mentioned it, it's Audrey by the Yarnflakes. That's her test knitting, and that one is called the Telluric. So, late April, look for that one if you're interested. I think that's it for that one. My last, actually, before I start, let me change my battery because I don't think it is going to make it. So, okay, we're back. So hopefully I didn't shift the camera too much because I didn't really think about it before I picked it up, and I was like, dang, probably should have marked where I put the camera. So hopefully it wasn't like a hard shift for you as to where the camera was. But my second test knit work in progress is called the Scrying Sweater, and it's by Elle of the Curio Yarns podcast. So she mentioned it in her last podcast, but here is my progress on it. So I am alternating skeins, but still I'm getting this kind of stripe. I don't mind it. I think it adds to it a little bit without actually doing like any of the work. So that's a plus for me. This is my own hand-dyed yarn. I really like this space, and I'm thinking of reordering it so I can do like a shawl of it. It's an 80/20 superwash merino bamboo, but I like the way that it drapes, kind of like alpaca. So I'm thinking of maybe doing a reorder on it and dyeing it up to do like a shawl out of it. Supposedly bamboo keeps you a little bit cooler than cotton does, and it has absorption properties like wool, so I think it'd be a good summertime type thing where it keeps you cool and absorbs kind of some of that moisture that may occur. But I'm really liking how this is turning out. It is another bottom up, so this one doesn't have steeks, so I'm at the point where I'm knitting the sleeves. I don't have the sleeves here with me, but I am working on those to get to a point where I can attach the sleeves and then just start working in the round again. But I think it's coming along fairly nicely. I'm loving this mint color. I don't know if you can see that, as trying to get it true to color. Yeah, that's more true to color. So it's a little bit darker than a mint. Kind of has like a teal undertone. I really like how the color came out. The gray is activated charcoal, so that's kind of that natural dyeing aspect, whereas opposed to the teal is food coloring that I mixed up, but the gray is activated charcoal. And for the activated charcoal, when you dye using that, you kind of have to let it sit in the yarn so that it takes up as much of that color as possible. It's not going to come out that rich black that the activated charcoal is, but you'll get hues of gray, and depending on how long you let it sit before you actually soak the yarn is how deep the color will go through. And for this method, how I do it is with the plastic wrap. So I'll soak the yarn, drain some of that water out, most of the water out, then put it in the plastic wrap and put the activated charcoal in the areas that I want to, wrap it up in the plastic wrap, let it sit for a while, and then throw it into a pot with just a little bit of water and heat it up that way, whereas opposed to this one where you just throw it in the water and throw the dye in with it and let it soak up the dye. If you were to do it that way, the activated charcoal, because it's so fine, would probably spread throughout the pot, and then you'll get some muted colors of whatever you were trying to do, but I've never tried it. Maybe I'll try it in the future. Back on track. So, this bottom up, working on the sleeves, and then I can continue to work in the round. It's a sport weight sweater, but I would imagine it would work for even a heavy fingering. It just depends on what you're okay with in the gauge. I think if I were to do this again, I would do it in a heavy fingering just to get a little bit of looser top, a little bit more drapey in it. But I do like the drape of this yarn, it's coming out really well, so I'm not mad about it at all. This is it balled up. So nice and squishy. I love it. It's so squishy. I'm really thinking about redoing that bamboo because it came out really well. It took the dye really well, one, and then the squish factor and the drapey factor, I'm really in love with this. So I think it would make a really, really great shawl. But that pattern, it's a little bit later release date. I want to say it's May. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me. But it's a little bit later release date, so I'm taking my time with that one. That one is more of when I'm relaxing, potato chippy, knitting, because the sleeves right now are just round and round and round. I am alternating skeins in that one, and if I remember, I'll take a picture of how I do those 2 at a time sleeves while alternating with the balls. I do want to do a future tutorial on that because someone had asked in the comments, sorry I forget your name, but you had asked in the comments if I could do a tutorial on that. I am working on getting a tripod stand where I can do tutorials. Right now you're balanced on a whole bunch of knitting books and some classic Disney VHS tapes, which are kind of thick. But once I get a real tripod stand that I can do some tutorials on, I'll definitely show you how I do those, because I think 2 at a time sleeves makes your job a whole lot easier. Like, you don't have to do those markers. Everything is taking place at one time. If you're decreasing or increasing on one, you're decreasing or increasing on the other. Like, you can do it all at one time. As long as your stitch counts match up on both sleeves, you're probably doing it just fine. And then you don't have to worry about your gauge changing from one sleeve to the next. Like, sometimes you may put down your one sleeve and then pick it up like a couple weeks later and your gauge is completely off from the gauge that you knit the first sleeve on. So I like doing my sleeves 2 at a time because I don't have any of those other mitigating factors that may impact how the sleeve looks on the finished garment, which I'm sure could probably come out, you could work out in blocking, but I don't really have to worry about that when you do 2 at a time. So hopefully I'll get that tripod in and do some tutorials for you guys. Amazon is limiting their shipping. I think I read that. They're doing priority in their shipping, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe I should go ahead and order it and hopefully get it in the next couple weeks and then do a tutorial for you guys. But that is one tutorial that I want to do in the future, as well as showing you my process of the food safe dyeing. So if I talk about anything else that you would want a tutorial about, please let me know, because I'm keeping a running log just to keep content fresh on my channel. So if you have anything else that you have questions about or you want to see close-ups of or anything like that, please leave a comment down below and I will get back to you and also put it in my little journal that I keep for miscellaneous ideas for the podcast. So that is all of my knitting content. I'm going to show you a couple stash acquisitions that I have, as well as talk about some life stuff that's been happening. But if you're just here for what I'm working on, finished objects, thank you for joining me. Like I said, if you're a new viewer, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit a like. If you don't, I'm not opposed to thumb down, but you don't have to. But if you want to, leave a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback. So leave a comment, subscribe, like. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. And we'll get into just some chit-chat at the end. So I was sick not the week after my last podcast, but the week after that for like 2 weeks. It was just a regular flu, but I came down with the flu, got it from my husband, came down with that, so I couldn't podcast. That was the week that I usually podcast, was that second week, so I couldn't podcast then. I ended up feeling a little bit better, and then seasonal allergies hit, and then I started feeling crappy all over again. So when I went to the doctor the second time, she said that I had something that turned into a sinus infection, so then I had to be on antibiotics, and so I was down for like another week, and it was awful. Like, I had this awful cough. Like, I had to sleep in the recliner for, I want to say, at least a week, because it was one of those where as soon as you lay down, you start hacking for your life. Like, that was what was happening. So I had to sleep in the recliner for ever, it felt like, and you don't realize how much you miss your bed until you, like, literally can't sleep in your bed. But once I started feeling a little bit better, I was like, oh, let's do this podcast thing. So now we're here. I probably still sound a little bit nasally, but it's not like sinus infection or anything like that. It's just the seasonal allergies that's like, hey, we're still here. You still can't feel 100%, but hey, you're not coughing. I'm coughing a little bit, but not anywhere near where I was coughing before. So that is definitely a plus for me. But let me show you some happy mail that I got while I was sitting on the couch and ordering yarn because I felt just awful. This one, look how pretty. Black and color burst. Right up my lane. But this one is from Mitchell's Creations. She has a website. If you follow her on Instagram, she announces when she does shop updates. But I don't know. I don't think she has like a blog or anything. But that's where I usually get information on shop updates. But this one is in her fingering base, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. 463 yards per 100 grams, and this one is called Drunken Unicorns. And I love it. It's actually the first time that I've gotten a chance to get this base. I was eyeing it for a while, but every time I go, like, because I'm not one to hop, as soon as somebody releases, like, their shop updates, I keep it, like, in the back of my head, and a couple days later, I'm like, oh, I should have checked the shop update, and every time I would go, this one was sold out or unavailable, but I finally got it, and I love it, and I can't wait to do something with it. Probably a shawl. Sorry if you heard that. That was my dog expressing gas. So, sorry if that made that into the podcast. It wasn't me. You alright back there? I have a 13-year-old lab, so he makes lots of noises and lets you know and expresses his discomfort very vocally. He's over that stage where he just kind of sits in the corner and be quiet. Like, he'll let you know, like, he's not feeling what's going on right now. You should be paying attention to him, and he's going to do everything in his power to try to get your attention by making miscellaneous noises. The next one, back to the podcast, the next acquisition I'm going to show you. If you are part of Hue Loco's Backyard Chicken Club and you haven't gotten your club, this is a spoiler, so don't look. But it's been a couple weeks because I was down and out. But it's been a couple weeks since she mailed it out, so you should have it. But if you don't, just in case, I'm going to be showing that next. So this is the Backyard Chicken Club from Hue Loco. It is 1 50-gram skein and then 2 20-gram skeins. So those are those two colors. This colorway is called Lemon Penciled Frisian Hen, and it's on the sock base. But I'm loving those speckles right in there. I'm not a mini person, per se. I have let me see if you can see, a thing full of, this is so hard sometimes, a thing full of minis right there, and one of these days I'll get to using them. Maybe I'll get back into socks, and that'll definitely be a use for them, but right now I'm not on a sock kick. But I don't mind a mini or two at all. But that's part of her Backyard Chicken Club. It is sold out if you're interested in joining, but she does her mini clubs I want to say they start in like January, and then she does her regular club, which is like, it's called, one of them is called like the Minimalist, one of them is called the Ombre Club, one of them is called the Avant-Garde, and then she has a sweater club, and she starts those in May, I want to say. It's like towards the beginning of summer, end of spring time frame, so I want to say it's like May that she starts those clubs back up. And I love everything that Hue Loco does. She is brilliant with color, so I always join her clubs if financially feasible at the time. But this one was Christmas money, so it was financially feasible. Oh, my teacup. Can't forget my thing. The thing I do with the thing. This is my Alice in Wonderland cup. Focusing for you, but it says drink me at the top, and then it says Curiouser and Curiouser and different phrases from the Mad Hatter. But this is one of the tourist trap, true Disney spend your money on thing cups. I got it from Disney World, so I think I paid like $20 for it. It's not worth $20, but I paid $20 for it. And the tea that I'm drinking is Harney and Sons. I didn't bring it in here for you, but I will definitely link it down below if you are interested in it. It's one of their aged white teas, if I'm not mistaken, and it is really, really good. I'm really loving it. So I'll definitely link all of that, including the yarns and the colorway for the sweater, because I can't remember what that... Did I say Korma? It's Chroma, isn't it? Korma is a Indian dish, isn't it? Chroma. Nitpicks Chroma. If I said Korma, I apologize. Nitpicks Chroma. I will put the colorway down there below for you guys. But that, I believe, is everything that I had to talk to you about today. Again, I apologize for the delay in the podcast, but hopefully this will keep you occupied during these, we're not saying the C word, during these times that is becoming a temporary new norm. But hopefully I'll be back to you on my normal schedule and nothing else will affect me besides seasonal allergies. And thank you for joining me. Don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you are a subscriber, thank you so much. We are almost at 200, and I'm planning on doing a giveaway when we get to 200. I would have been happy with, hopefully I'll edit out that cough, but I would have been happy with 30 people to come and chat with me about knitting. The fact that there's, I think last time I checked, 150 of you guys blows my mind. So thank you so much if you're a subscriber and you're a returning viewer. I really do appreciate you. I thank you for all the comments that you leave. They definitely keep me occupied, and I love chatting with you. So thank you so much for all of that, and thank you for coming back and spending time with me, taking time out of your day to spend time with me. I really do appreciate that. And until next time, thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful and wonderful and wonderful week. Bye.